5 victims, 50 years, never caught once. The man who made American law enforcement look completely powerless. San Francisco, 1968. Beautiful, free, and completely unaware. A killer was already choosing his first victims in the fog. He chose isolated locations and studied his targets for hours in the dark. By the time anyone arrived, he was already gone without a trace. Harris arrived at the first scene before dawn on December 20th, 1968. 15 years in homicide. Nothing had prepared him for this. The call came at 11:10 p.m. to victims found at Lake Herman Road. Within an hour, every detective in Vallejo was driving there fast. 3 attacks in 6 months, no fingerprints, no witnesses, nothing usable. Harris told his captain the same thing every time, same man every time. August 1969, 3 newspapers received identical letters from someone calling himself the Zodiac. Decode my cipher or I will kill again. That was the exact message. 408 symbols. 2 amateurs cracked it in just 8 days. What was inside made newspapers debate whether to publish it at all. Blue Rock Springs, July 4th, 1969. A couple watching fireworks in the distance. A man walked out of the darkness and knocked on the window. At 12:40 a.m., he called Vallejo police himself from a payphone. He described both crime scenes, then said I did it and hung up. Wade flew in from Washington with a file already 3 inches thick. Harris looked at it and said, why is nobody talking to each other? 4 agencies, 3 counties, 0 coordination between any of them. Comment, did the system's failure allow him to keep killing freely? The taxi driver felt something wrong the moment the passenger got in. He drove faster and made it to the police station, very alive. Harris walked every crime scene on foot even years after the attacks. He believed the location always told you something the reports could not. Every new letter was examined under laboratory conditions immediately. The forensic detail was remarkable, yet never enough to identify anyone. Harris briefed his team every night, regardless of whether there was new information. He said staying sharp between breaks was what solved cold cases eventually. Wade read the decoded cipher message 17 times in one sitting. He said later it was the most deliberately constructed threat he had ever read. Lake Berryessa, September 27, 1969. A couple on the shore reading. A hooded figure walked out of the tree line and everything changed instantly. The cross-circle symbol on the hood was designed to be remembered. He wanted to be identified, just not caught. Harris was at the hospital before the ambulance had finished unloading. He stood outside the emergency room for 4 hours waiting for any information. The letter threatening school buses was the one that changed everything completely. Every police department in California put officers on buses the next morning. The taxi attack happened 3 weeks after the school bus letter was received. He moved on his own schedule, nobody else's. The taxi driver told investigators everything the witnesses could not confirm. Harris crouched beside it in the rain and stared at it for 20 minutes. Wade told Washington the killer was operating across multiple jurisdictions deliberately. Nobody in Washington changed how the agencies communicated with each other. Every new letter meant the city held its breath for 48 hours. Harris answered every press question with the same 2 words, still investigating. The cipher symbols kept Harris awake 3 nights out of every 7. He believed the answer was in the symbols. He just couldn't see it yet. Harris drove every route the killer might have taken between attack sites. He logged over 4,000 miles doing it and found nothing definitive. Wade compared handwriting samples from over 300 suspects over 5 years. Not one was a confirmed match, not even close enough to pursue further. Harris stood at that podium and told the press the truth plainly. We have a profile. We have evidence. We do not have a name. The psychological profile said organized, methodical, and highly intelligent, no surprises. What it could not say was where to find someone who fit that description. The evidence room held 43 separate items from the original investigations. Harris knew the number without checking. He had counted them many times before. Harris pointed to the California map, and Wade leaned in to look closely. Two men staring at the same problem from different angles. Still no answer. City officials wanted the case deprioritized. Harris refused to sign off on it. He told them directly, unsolved means he is still out there somewhere. Wade presented findings that should have changed. How agencies shared information nationally. The officials listened carefully, then recommended further study before any action. Harris watched the figure walking for 11 minutes before moving toward him. Nothing, wrong build, wrong gate, wrong everything, another dead end. The Cipher comparison finally showed a pattern that had been invisible before. It answered one question about the method and opened 6 new ones immediately. Harris sat alone with the Cipher at 3 a.m. more times than he could count. He said later the hardest part was not knowing if he was even close. Someone had sat at a typewriter and composed each letter with deliberate care. That level of patience was the most disturbing detail in the entire case. The postal worker remembered a man matching the general description. 2 years earlier, it was not enough to act on, but it was the first human memory in years. The call Wade received that night changed the direction of the investigation completely. He was on a plane back to California before the sun came up. The court board by 1972 covered an entire wall, 50 feet of accumulated evidence. Harris stood before it and knew the answer was there, hidden somewhere inside it. The newspaper said the killer was gone. Harris knew that was exactly wrong. Silence was part of the pattern. He had gone quiet before and come back. By 1973, the city wanted closure. Harris wanted the truth instead. Those two things were not the same, and he refused to pretend they were. Wade reviewed 2,500 suspect files without a single confirmed match across them all. He kept going because stopping felt like giving the killer exactly what he wanted. Harris knocked on doors other detectives had stopped knocking on years before. Every single one led to the same dead end. He knocked anyway. The original Cipher letters were examined dozens of times with every available technology. Every time the result came back the same. Not enough to identify anyone. Wade presented the case to Washington 3 times and was told the same thing. Insufficient evidence. He walked out and went straight back to work every time. Harris worked the case from his kitchen table for 11 years after retirement. His family understood some cases never leave a detective completely alone. Wade made sure every new team had everything he had built over a decade. He told each one, the answer is already in this file somewhere. Ultraviolet analysis revealed details on the original letters invisible to the naked eye. Every new discovery raised new questions without ever answering the original ones. Fresh eyes and new technology gave investigators their first genuine hope in 20 years. What they found made them wonder how it had been missed for so long. DNA technology gave investigators a tool that had not existed when the crimes occurred. The results came back and created an entirely new set of questions immediately. The new DNA findings changed the direction of the case for the first time in decades. Every investigator in the room leaned forward at exactly the same moment. The algorithmic Cipher analysis found a pattern human eyes had missed for 50 years. It was not a solution, but it was the closest anyone had ever come. The 202 announcement brought the case back into national headlines for the first time in years. Harris read every word of the coverage from his kitchen table the next morning. Harris read about the new developments and reached for the case file immediately. His sharp blue eyes still moved through the pages the same way they always had. The forensic lead showed Wade something on the examination table that stopped him completely. He asked her to repeat the finding twice before he wrote anything down. The last original Cipher letter was handled with the care given to irreplaceable history, because That was exactly what it was, irreplaceable and still unexplained. Wade sat in the front row and watched the next generation learn the case. He answered every question they had and told them the ones nobody had answered yet. The algorithmic analysis ran for 72 hours before producing its first result. Both analysts stared at the screen without speaking for a very long time after. Harris walked back into the police department for the first time in years. He carried the same worn case file he had always carried. Nothing had changed inside it. Wade read the latest DNA report with the caution of someone who had hooked before. Every previous breakthrough had eventually led back to the same unanswered question. The young detective carried the evidence box with both hands and complete focus. She understood that what was inside it had defined careers and consumed lives. Harris and Wade sat across the same file they had shared for 30 years. To men who had spent careers on one question, still without the final answer. The 2020 announcement brought more journalists than any previous briefing had ever seen. Wade watched the room and said nothing until every question had been asked first. The last original letter went under the scanner with gloved hands and held breath. Every person in that room understood they were handling something history had not finished with yet. Harris went through the complete file one more time, looking for what he might have missed. After 50 years of reading it, he still read every page like it was the first time. Wade stood at the window as the city lit up below him at dusk. One case, one career, one question that the city below still could not answer. The young detective compared the 1969 photograph to the modern street beforehand. 50 years of change and one thing that had never changed at all. Harris sat alone with the file one final night and read it start to finish. He closed it at 3 a.m. and sat in the dark for a long time after. Wade stood apart from the group at the memorial with his head bowed quietly. For the first time in decades, his hands were completely empty, no folder, no file. The young analyst compared the digital records to the Cipher copy beside her screen. She found something in the comparison that made her stop typing completely. The researcher worked alone in the empty library until the building lights went off. Some questions pull certain people so completely that they cannot walk away from them. Harris and Wade spent combined careers of over 60 years on one unsolved case. The killer was never identified and may still be alive somewhere today. Harris and Wade sat at that kitchen table and looked at each other across the file. Everything that needed to be said between them had already been said years ago. San Francisco woke up this morning the same way it woke up in 1968. The cipher is still on display. The case is still open. The answer is still missing.